everybody, welcome back to The Hobby Musician. Now you're joining us today as we work our way through a building mini-series here on the channel. And if you're brand new, don't worry, go ahead and click the link at the top. And that's a playlist I've put together of every single episode in this little project. So you can either go back and get caught up, or you can skip around and go to some future steps if they're more closely related to what you're working on. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't normally film videos where I'm frustrated, but today I've gotten myself into kind of a pickle, and I need to get out of that pickle. Well, it's come to the point where I need to do a relatively easy step in the building process. Now, we have other videos where we talk about building necks. It takes a lot. You've got to put together a neck blank, we carve channels in for the truss rod, we attach fingerboards. We've covered all of that in previous episodes. But one of the easiest last things that you need to do is you need to radius a fretboard. Now all that means is in the building process, whether you do it yourself, you get a custom shop, a factory, whatever, fingerboards come flat and square. They're little flat slabs of wood. After you get them on, you need to carve or sand a subtle curve that goes up and down the neck, because that's the way these instruments need to be made to make them play well, all that kind of stuff. Now, the severity of that curve depends on the model of guitar. Basses, guitars, whatever it is, each company even has some of their unique curves. But it's a very easy process because there are very simple tools that are available for you to do that. This is a wood block where the company that I got it from just took a piece of wood and they had machines carve into it the curve. Now I just take sandpaper and stick it to this, and when the sandpaper sticks to this, it takes on the curve of the block, and that wood is sturdy. So now I can take it, come along and up and down the neck and just sand it until the whole neck takes on the curve of this block. And I went to get ready to do this, and it works out just fine. I ordered this for previous building projects. I pulled it out and I started to prepare. I was outside getting ready to do this, and I held up the block and I thought, well, this is great. Okay, everything's working out, until I took the block and I got down here to the end. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it to the side so you can see this. When you hold everything in line, it's hard to see it straight on. When you hold everything in line, I want to point out, if you try to match up everything, you actually see right here, right at the edge, you can't get the block to reach from this edge to the other edge simultaneously. If I slide it over here and cover this edge and turn it around, it's completely missing this edge. At the end of the day, what that means is this block is too narrow. It's too skinny to cover this whole fretboard. So I thought, okay, this is easy. I'll hop online. I looked around. I did my homework. Now, sure, if you're out there and you know of a place where you can order wider sanding blocks, please let us know. Go down to the comments, type it in, share that knowledge with us. But I can tell you this, I looked for a long time and I could not find any blocks that were wider than this. But I need one. So I started to think, okay, am I going to have to make the tool that I need to make the instrument that I'm making? And the answer is yes. If you're a viewer of the channel, regular viewer, you probably know that we do a lot of 3D software, 3D modeling, and ultimately 3D printing. So I started to think, could I potentially model a block in 3 dimensions and then print it out to serve as my tool? I thought about that for maybe 2 seconds, because what ends up happening, the size of block that I would need and the amount of material that the 3D printer would have to use to make it strong enough is just not economical. 3D printers operate on the assumption that you start with a blank area, and then little by little you add material, this plastic filament, you add material to build up to whatever object you're working on. Now there is a different technique. If you think about the technique of CNC routing, well, CNC routing works on literally the opposite principle. What you do with a CNC project is you start by providing bulk material, way more material than you need, and then using drill bits and routers and things like that, the CNC slowly takes material away until you're left with the object. So both techniques come at the same problem from different angles. One builds up to your object and one takes away. Now the nice thing about taking away is you could start with material that's easily attainable like wood. So I reached out to a good friend of mine, Jesse Wilcox. He's a friend of the channel, and he's a gifted crafter, creator, as well as engineer, and he has a CNC machine that he is willing to help us out with this project. So what we need to do right now, we're going to switch up the camera, and we're actually going to 3D model the exact piece that we need, and I'm going to be able to take that file and send it off to Jesse, and he'll be able to load it up in his CNC machine, and hopefully we'll be able to create a sanding block that is wide enough to suit our purposes here. All right, so I'm going to get the camera changed, and we'll pick this right back up when we got the software in front of us. All right, everybody, we are here and all set up. You can see on the screen we've got a blank, document set up for us on Onshape. And as we said before, really the goal of this is I kind of want to make, or I want to 3D model a rectangular block, and then I want to cut out a curve on one side of that block. So here's what we're going to do. You can kind of take this, and you can see I can move this around. Well, I want to orient it over here on the top. I'll just click the front to get us nice and flat. Then we need a new sketch. So I'm going to try to sketch on this front plane. One of the simple tools we have is we have this center point rectangle. So what that'll allow me to do, I can come to the middle of this drawing, and you can see it recognizes. I click once, and then I start to move my mouse around, and wherever I click, it will now draw a rectangle. Now we said before, I want specific dimensions. Well, as soon as I click it, you can see I've got these crazy numbers out here. Well, the numbers you're seeing, this document is actually default set to metric units. So it's measuring everything in millimeters. Well, what I can do to intentionally change that, there is also a dimension tool. So I'm going to click on the dimension tool, and then I'm going to click on this one side. If I come out, you can see it's set to 105.4 something millimeters. Well, all I have to do, this is the side that I want to be 3.5. We said, a 2x4, if you go to the hardware store, it's going to be 3.5 by 1.5. It's actually a misnomer there. So there, I'm going to click 3.5, and I'm going to type inch. Now, if I type inch, watch what happens when I hit enter. It actually moves to 88.9. Well, that's just the millimeter equivalent of what I put in. So still with the dimension tool, I'm going to come here to the side. You can see there it's 36 and something. Well, I want this to be 1.5 inch, and there we go. Hit enter, switches to 38.1. That's the millimeter equivalent. We now have a rectangle that is the side-on dimension of a 2x4. Well, how do we get this to 3 dimensions? This is still, if I rotate this, you can see it's only 2D. Well, here, we'll line it back up to front. I'm going to take the extrude tool. That's going to allow us to take this shape and actually move it whichever dimension. I'll move this a little bit so you can kind of see. Now it's 3D, but it's coming out at us. I typically like to work, I like to switch the opposite direction. I like to send things back into the screen. And how far do we want to send it? Well, I'm imagining, I measured those blocks, like anywhere in the 8 to 10 inch range is a good size for my hands, that kind of thing. So if I click in here to the depth, let's just say, let's make this 10 inches. Well, if I hit 10 inches, it's a solid surface. You can see all the other settings. If I hit enter, now look what happens. If you move this around, now we've got a block. I'll zoom out a little bit. Now we've got a block that kind of is modeling a 2x4 chunk that's 10 inches long. Now if I hit the green check mark, that's great. We have the start of something here, but remember, I need one of these surfaces to be curved, and I need it to be a specific curve. I want a 14-inch radius for the neck, which means I need to essentially draw a circle that the radius is 14 inches, which means the diameter is 28 inches, and I need to use that circle to kind of scoop out that side. So how do we do that? Let me reorient this to the front, and we'll show you. I'm going to create a new sketch. So my rectangle and my circle are separate. I'm going to still use the same plane to sketch that, but now the tool we're using is a center point circle. So you can go up here, I'm going to click the center point circle, and I'm not going to put it right on the middle, and you'll see why in a second. I'm going to move this up. Now you'll notice it still does recognize, I want it to be lined up on the center line, so you can see it kind of highlights it when I get close. So I'm going to click once, and then as you see, I can kind of drag this circle out. And to save ourselves time, when I click it here, the first thing you can do right after you click, you can actually go in and type. So I'm going to type in 14-inch. It just saves, it cuts out a step instead of using the dimension tool. Type in 14-inch, and when I hit enter, you're going to notice something happen. The circle gets huge, and you can kind of see here that, oh, you know what? I messed that up. Let's go back and undo that. That made it a 14-inch diameter. You can see here that this line goes the entire way. That means we should actually have typed in 28. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, actually, where's my undo button? There we go. Undo, undo. Go back, get our center point circle, click, drag it out. This time I'm going to type in 28-inch. And now we have a 28-inch circle, which is 14 inches in diameter. Now I'm going to zoom out. You're going to see, wait a minute, it looks huge. Well, actually, it should be huge. If you think about it, 3.5 inches is our rectangle. 28 inches for our circle, it really should be large. Well, I want to now get one edge of this circle to just skin off the top. So what do? I need to come up here and I need to use the transform tool. So I'm going to click on the transform tool and I'm going to click on the circle. Now the circle, you can see I got these new controls here. I can move it to the side, I can move it up. If I click and drag this arrow up, I'll zoom out a little bit more so you can see this. If I click and drag the circle up, I'm looking at the bottom of that circle and I'm looking at where it kind of cuts into the rectangle. Now if I click over here to accept the changes, you notice it moves the circle up, and if I zoom back in, here we go. We have a curve that's coming down into that circle, coming down into that rectangle at the curve that I want. So now if I just move this sideways, all I need to do is I need to take our flat circle and I need to scoop out the existing material. So we're still going to use the extrude feature, but instead, we're going to reverse the direction like we did before. But instead of add, I'm going to change the direction to remove. And if you notice now the remove, it's starting to already scoop out. So what I need to do is I need to scoop out the entire 10 inches. So 10 inch in the direction. If I hit enter, and now we kind of move this around, zoom this out and in, you can kind of see it goes all the way to the back. Now, if we want to be extra careful about this, let's make this 11 inches so the circle goes all the way through. And let's accept that. And now, if we look, we have a block that has a curve carved into the top of it. And this is essentially what I need to send off to Jesse for him to load up into a CNC machine. He can take just a block of wood and load this file up, and then that CNC machine will carve away and leave us with this tool, which is what we need to finish the neck. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to export this file, send it off to Jesse, and actually it's going to be a day or two, so we'll have a kind of a flash cut to a few days in the future, and we'll finish off this project. So I'll see you again in a little bit. All right, everybody, it has been a few days and I'm excited to report that it is finished. Our customized sanding block is done and here. Now you can see here, Jesse did exactly what we asked him to. He was able to take that file and load it up with some bulk wood that he had, and that CNC machine was able to carve in the dimensions of our 3D model and produce for us our sanding block. Now, without further ado, here it is. Now, I know it doesn't look like much. It looks like a block with a curve cut in it, but Jesse was kind enough to kind of give it a little personal flair for us. If I turn it over, not only did he get us exactly what we needed, he also did a little bit of personalizing. We got the hobby musician there on the side, so everybody knows that's what this is for. Well, I was so excited. I got this yesterday. So I ran right outside, and you can see in this time lapse, I stuck my sandpaper on it, clamped up the neck onto a board, and did the radiusing. And this worked like a treat. You can see here, with a little bit of time and some elbow grease, you can really get a really nice curve carved into these necks. Now, I do want to show you it is different. So here's the block that caused the problem in the first place. And if we hold these up, you can see the dimensions of our new block are bigger, and they are just enough bigger to cover the problem that we had in the first place. We said it was just these edges right down here at the bottom of the neck. Now if you hold up the block, you can see it completely covers the neck right here down at the thickest part. So yes, it's true. We did have to build a tool to help us build a guitar. But at the end of the day, with a little bit of problem solving, a little creativity, we're able to get what we need to do the jobs that we need to do. So I hope you got something out of this episode. I want to thank Jesse again. We couldn't have done this without him. So as always, I want to thank you for watching. And until next time, play on, my friends. Play on.